Hello and welcome everyone to the Movement Made Better podcast. We got DJ Murakami with us, and we are going to chat about masseter training and some neck training also, buddy.
Cool. Yeah. I've been playing around with this for most of the year and I'm loving it. Love to dive in with you guys.
Have you had to get new shirts or anything like that just because of too much neck and trap size?
I got to pop some collars now.
I mean, you think about, everybody talks about training the core tissues, right? So you talk about lumbar and thoracic, but nobody really talks about, at least in the overall fitness community, nobody really talks about training the neck tissues. And you look at it, you go, well, you got muscles there. You should, especially the jaw, because it is one of the strongest areas. So it would make sense that you should train them, at least train them responsibly.
Yeah. And what I've kind of discovered is it's a easy access point to global tension and bracing. So we think about the hands and grip, we think about the feet, but the jaw, which is, it co-activates with the neck. So I'm just thinking jaw and neck are like one system. That right there is easy for people to tap into and use as like a bracing technique. It's an easier version of the Valsalva maneuver, essentially how I see it.
And you don't need to apply, for people that think, oh, this is super dangerous, this and that. Like you don't need to apply that much force to get the benefit.
No, I mean, you just clench your teeth and I mean, chewing beef jerky is probably going to be more difficult than biting a load properly.
Well, because even without load, I've just been using a towel and just putting the towel in my mouth and biting down on that, even just going through other basic movements like deadlifting and rows. And the perception for me is vastly less effort.
Yeah. And I want to say thank you because I first started playing around with it because of the strongman feats. And then Dennis, you're the first person I saw exercising with it, doing like a compound movement, deadlift with the kettlebell in your mouth. And that just opened up a whole new world for me. And then using the band on top of that. And I think there's really good application, not just for like cool feat of strength, but for helping beginners and general population finding tension and incorporate the head. It's really hard for people to have the sense of where their head is relative to their thorax and hips.
Yes.
And when you have kind of a band or some sort of anchor, they automatically like orient their balance and structure over that. And I think that's really good reference and feedback to have.
Well, I think we lose perspective that on top of the spine is our bowling ball. And so when you sit back and you look at that, you go, well, you've got to make sure the whole entire spine and the tissues supporting that are good with supporting this bowling ball that's sitting on top of it. So to tell people to just really train only 2/3 of that tissue line just doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, it's all connected. I used to hear people like Dr. Perry Nicholson say like the head or the neck or something is the psoas. And it was kind of like mystical, but I'm like, it makes sense because that bowling ball, when you balance it, your feet, your hips are all going to have to orient around that and adjust. And you have stabilizing muscles that are going to, come on and come into play in different orientations. So it makes total sense how it's all connected.
The stabilization of the jaw and then the co-contraction activation of the neck tissues, that then takes what I think would be inefficient energy expenditure as you're going through exercises and compound movements. The body's trying to stabilize all this, but once you bring that bite force into it, then can take that energy and then dissipate and extend it to where task is mostly being generated.
Yeah, that's interesting, especially when we ran some tests of people biting the band and hooking around their feet. And the vast majority were reporting more reps workload being done with lower perceived effort, it feeling easier, lighter. That's something that everyone can try, and which sold me on the idea of this is a tool, an easy tool that can be used, bypass all the cueing, just have someone set up with this tension. And it's a good one.
So are you starting someone out with a pretty light resistance band, almost like one of those those really, I think like TheraBands, those thin ones, or is it something thicker than that?
Yeah, I'm starting them out light. I'm keeping them light, and I'm giving everyone a light one. It's just so they have the reference, pretty much, because they're allowed to extend tall from that point instead of kind of people just cranking their head back thinking tall. They're forced to do it through their structure, their spine, their body. And I think just that global brace while doing a dynamic movement, they really get to feel, okay, this is kind of what I want to be doing and go towards. And people I've had do it and then immediately take the band off and like, okay, do a next set and try to mimic or recreate that tension. It replaces 50 cues where I'd be saying, head back, shoulders here, all this. They just feel it.
That was a big part for me, was because the first time I ever did it, I only grabbed a 4 kg kettlebell. That was it. And then I had 35 kg kettlebells. So I was like, well, let me try some deadlifts. So I did them without the loaded in the jaw. And then I did the next set loaded with the jaw. And I was like, oh my God, that just seemed so light and so almost effortless to lift those same kettlebells that it had just literally been like 2 minutes early.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I've been thinking about that. I think we're so used to loading the body through the hands and through the scap and that part, that when you create a long lever and kind of load this head, everything kind of below it gets stacked, lined up. And then when you use that long lever without it, you're like, okay, this is more of the into the fulcrum. You know what I mean?
So have you tested it out so right now, you haven't put them on their feet, so you get more of this, vertical force. Have you done it where you set the anchor point more horizontal in front of you, where you're biting and pulling back this way? So like a head height anchor point for the band?
Yeah, I played around with that for more like neck isolation work. For body weight stuff, the band anchored to the feet works great, like sagittal plane, push-ups, pull-ups, rows, stuff like that. For deadlifts and for squats, I like the band a few feet in front on the ground. So it's pulling like 45 degrees downward. And yeah, I'll do straight ahead and a bit up for neck isolation exercises.
So basically you like to set it at the angle of pull or push of whatever you're doing, essentially.
Yeah, essentially it's RNT, reactive neuromuscular training. What do I want to fight against? Yeah. And that's where I want to put it.
Well, I know when we post stuff with jaw training, master training, even neck training, you get the comments of that you're going to injure yourself and blah, blah, blah. But people have to understand, of course, you're starting with light stimulus. It's not like we're just diving full into like max load efforts. There is a lot of subtleties, especially with bite force training when you're loading externally, is to make sure, you're not biting down with just the incisors, but you want to make sure that your molars are engaged and really clenching that jaw.
Yeah, I think that's what people are imagining when they're thinking about what it would feel like. You don't want to feel any of incisors, front teeth at all.
No.
If you feel the molars, it's really effortless. I mean, you're just having that isometric clench, which is very strong if you have the proper occlusion biting down in the back. And speaking of that, it really teaches people, okay, that's like the way I need to bite that to get a good clamp is like a really good bite. And when I've had so many people message me saying, oh man, this like TMJ necks, that like these issues have kind of went away after that. We can't make the claim that this is the cure, but I'm wondering I wonder why. And I think because they're just like biting in this more centrated occlusion because they have the task of holding this in their mouth. So maybe just them accessing that can only be beneficial if they haven't before.
Well, I know you in your last webinar that I watched, you talked about Daniel Lieberman and his research out of Harvard, studying facial structure of our ancestors and the jaw structure of how our faces are so much smaller nowadays.
Yeah, faces are the masseter, the bone morphology, the structures has gone down. And they think they're not exactly sure the exact cause because it's probably multifactorial, but they know that it's not like evolutionary. It's something in the modern, because we have pretty much the same genetic profile, but something in the modern environment is causing us not to develop these features. And it's like modern processed food, like soft foods where we don't have to chew as much. Some people, if you get into like the mewing community, the myo-orofacial, like a myofunctional community, like that's the dentistry where they try to like put in the hardware and do the training to get your bite and jaw and everything in a certain alignment. They'll say, you know, we're just holding the way we hold our face is differently. And that's including the tongue posture, that's including the jaw. And I think before, all these things were constrained by, we were chewing a lot more food, a lot more fibrous and harder food. And so that's an easy thing that we could implement, is like, let's just treat it like we train exercise, right? We don't walk as much, so we're not using these muscles as much. Here's a great tool like a kettlebell or barbell where we could load it up and get bang for a buck in under 30 minutes. So, okay, let's see if we can do the same thing for the jaw. So it'd be interesting to, as you know, years go by, to see how it's going to affect the tissue. It's going to adapt. So it'd be interesting to see how the structure changes from this kind of training.
Do you see a lot of hesitation, trepidation from clients that you're introducing this to?
You know, I'm not having them do weighted jaw feats or anything. If anything, I'm just having them bite their t-shirt or bite a towel with the band.
Gotcha.
And at first they're like, weird, but then they do it and they're like, okay, like I kind of get it.
Yeah.
And then we remove it when they don't need it anymore, and they could kind of find that tension by themselves. So really, it is a little weird at first, maybe, but if I'm not having them lift heavy load, that would be, I'm sure they would be against that. But I have got a lot of online, of course, a lot of people think it's dangerous, think it's irresponsible, think you're going to ruin your teeth. And the dentists I've talked to, and of course, we have the strongmen who've been doing it since the 20s, and aerial circ performers in the 1800s. None of them, I can't find any incidents of dental damage from doing these. And they're doing like 200-pound lifts. They're doing body weight while carrying 200 pounds hanging from their jaw. If anything, these people seem to have kept their teeth into like old age. The Mighty Adam Jr. was on America's Got Talent recently, like 93, I believe, pulling a car with his teeth. So he's still performing the same feats. So I think if done properly, just like we treat deadlifts can be dangerous. But if you prepare yourself and you adapt and you treat it responsibly, it can actually be a healthful, build resiliency, and be beneficial for you. So it's just like any other exercise. And I don't think it's more dangerous than, say, I don't know, a bench press, which kills people every year.
It's the most dangerous exercise there is.
Yeah, it is. So I think people don't take into account the danger of something like a bench press, but it does happen rather frequent, a lot more than I think people would expect.
I think it's the highest, it's literally the highest like death rate of any exercise or injury is bench press.
Right?
Yeah. And people freak out about Olympic lifting.
I went on a little wormhole and rabbit hole, and looked at the like descriptions of the deaths from 1 year of all the bench pressing accidents, mortalities.
Okay.
And most of them are at home, right? There's someone's in a garage gym, and there is asphyxiation. They're like crushing their windpipe or dropping it on their neck. There's some sad ones where like kids pull the weights down.
Oh, that's right.
One person died on a like lat pull down machine. In the description, I can't even figure out how he did it.
Whoa,
but there's a lot of ways to. He like got tangled up in it somehow. I can't describe how it happened. I would.
Wow. Well, you know what's crazy is people with in-home equipment, you're thinking monetary spending, right? And fitness equipment is one of those things where, generally speaking, you get what you pay for. So if you're paying less, the quality is probably just that, right? So when you're looking at a bench that you're going to be laying on with a lot of weight above you, don't go cheap, folks. Let's just start there, right? There was a company, I don't even know if they're around, but in the 70s and 80s, DP, was a very popular line of at-home fitness equipment. And they sold benches and bars. And, I'll tell you, it was, I think the max weight the bench could take was probably like 400 pounds, 500. And that's including the person themselves. It was so cheaply built, but you would find it in the Sears catalog, the JC Penney catalog. I don't know how many people had this stuff. I mean, I had one, but I look back at the quality and I'm like, holy shit, that was just.
You get that little wobble.
Oh, no. Yes. Oh, for sure. The pipes on it, the bars were really thin and hollow. So, yeah, I look back at that type of equipment and I'm like, yeah, like when I was putting the one, even just in high school, using 135, 150 with my body weight and that, you could feel that bench kind of just going, yeah. But you just don't really think about it at the time. You're just like, okay, whatever. But looking back, you're like, yeah, that was a piece of shit equipment. That was cheap.
Yeah, back in my day, that's what we lifted on.
Yeah.
You know what I do is when I was benching a lot, I would by myself, I would never clip or collar.
All the weights.
Yep. That's
just in case. That always cross. Yeah, you just
the little
turn it off, turn it the other way.
Can't do that with kids running around though.
Yeah, I don't know if I would recommend that.
Yeah,
to people, but
yeah, because I've lifted in my garage, but when the kids are running around in there, man, like
it's a different ballgame.
I don't do anything like that because you don't know, man. My son's all over the place. He'll try to tackle me if I had weight over my head.
Because they don't know. They just don't understand the ramifications. They don't get it. They're not old enough to comprehend what the possible results could be. They just see, woo, they're just doing what kids do.
They don't know what that little plate feels like.
Oh, yeah. Right.
When they understand the physics and gravity of it. Like when I was a kid, I remember a weight falling on my foot when I was messing around. And after that, I was like, okay, these things are weapons.
Yeah, for sure. Cut your toe off.
Well, you had talked about the specialized mouthpieces. I've been trying to find the ones that they used to use, that you see them pulling cars with, right? With an attachment. Where do you find those things?
So you can't find them. They have to be custom built. And funny you mentioned that. I'm headed to the post office right now to pick one up.
Really? Okay.
So I had one built for me by one of the top Cirque Iron Jaw athletes in like Romania.
Oh shit! Oh.
So I'm working with him. I'm training with him now.
Okay.
To do some of this stuff. So he had to get my bite profile. I sent it to him. He built the strap off of my mouth dimensions. And I kind of want to figure out how he did it and how it looks, and I'll try to, maybe I can make some for you guys. But you can't buy them anywhere.
Well, Laley can make molds pretty easily.
Well, I get the mold, but the attachment piece where you can attach the strap, because like when I did sled pulls, I was doing reverse sled walks. All I did was grab the towel and then I just threaded that through the strap. So that's what I was using. But because like I said, I was trying to Google, well, where do I find these? Because you see them on the World's Strongest Man contests and things like that, where, they have it attached to the truck or the Jeep or whatever they're pulling. And so you got to have those custom made, huh? Okay. All right.
As I've been going heavier with the towel, they've been ripping, even like doubling it up, like folding it up, like my incisors, like it will just cut through the fabric. And I'm like, yeah, you can't really, like, depending on the fabric, you have to be careful loading it up heavy. But this is like, ridiculously heavy. The towel's okay for manageable weight, but yeah, you're going to need something leather. One of those leather straps would be perfect for a car. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I was pulling 225. That felt really good. Just backwards.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that felt really good. I even did reverse crawl pattern with that. Felt really good. I know people would be like, oh, what about the excessive neck extension? But it was just locked in. It was stable. It didn't feel.
I mean, it's kind of pulling you into more traction.
Right? So that's why I was like, okay. So I think some of the things that we think might happen, actually, they don't. Right? So in that reverse crawl pattern, you literally, your arms are pushing your back is pulling, everything's working synergistically together. It feels just amazing.
Yeah. And what's wrong with loading neck extension? You know, that's any wrestling you see or do. You like, someone's trying to pull your head down and you're bridging on it. And these people probably have healthier, more resilient muscles around the neck and cervical spine than the average person. So yeah, I mean, get the neck strong in all different positions.
Yeah, well, you bring up a great point. Like if you're getting into a grappling, if you're grappling or you're in a fight with somebody, a lot of times they're going to pull you in, right? They want to get you in close. Well, when somebody grabs the back of your head, you don't just let them pull you forward. You resist, like you want to try to get away from them. So yeah, you've got to do the same exact thing. Load that neck and extension.
Yeah, I'm sure there's people out there like, oh, got to keep my neck neutral. And then their faces in the dirt.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to get with you on that and talk about getting that mouthpiece. So I'm definitely interested in getting one for sure.
Yeah, I'd like to check that out for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And Neil, that hit me up after.
Yeah, definitely. So I know you talked about the neck training. Iron Neck sent me in one of their tools, and I really liked it. I'd enjoy it for myself, but I have a really hard problem getting clients to use it. And so I've really resorted to just using resistance bands to do the same exact thing. I mean, I know you're losing, some of the multi-dimensional advantages that the Iron Neck can give you, but yeah, it's interesting. Like I'm like, hey, I put this on, and it just, yeah,
because it looks like a medieval torture device or something.
It's a little bit of the look, but it's like the people that they're like, it's just not comfortable. Like I just don't like it squeezing on their head, because you got to really make sure it's cinched in, and they're just not really into that. Like they just don't. And so if right off the bat, if somebody's not like, okay, I'm good with how it feels, then they're always going to be like kind of fighting it instead of really buying into it.
I've never tried the Iron Neck. I would love to try it. But as far as the band, I mean, I'll give people like easy Swiss ball on the wall, leaning their head against it, doing flexion, extension, rotation. And yeah, that alone, and then just the feedback while doing exercises with the band, that isometric position with the neck while moving, that's really the bread and butter for me with like Gen Pop clients. And then for athletes, grapplers, contact sport athletes, MMA fighters, for them, I'm doing the bite with the cable or plates and having them do like neck extensions, and even with the cable doing the rotations like the Iron Neck with that as well.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
but you're doing it mainly from the like holding with the bite.
Yes,
as opposed to strapping it to their head.
And the reason. So, I mean, there's a little personal bias there because I was in a car accident years ago and had some neck issues, cervical issues from that. And I used to do a lot of harness neck work. But after that, it kind of aggravated my neck. I'd have issues. And so when I did it from anchoring it from the mouth instead of the back of the head, I had no issues, and I was able to like load it up again. I was able to target the muscles, get a good stimulus. And I was like, wow, this is a great alternative from this other one that bothered me. And I got a lot of feedback from other people saying, I stopped doing direct neck work, whether that was like wrestler bridges or the harness strap because of pain, discomfort. But the bite grip tends to bypass that and allow them to train it. So, I still like the head, the harness stuff. If you could do it, great. But if you can't, like the bite is a good alternative. And I think one of the reasons is because of that coactivation between the jaw and the neck. Just clenching and just loading that up and doing shrugs even, it can alleviate a lot of roadblocks that people usually experience. So yeah, that's my go-to now for people is the bite, especially when you're doing stuff with contact that's includes the head and the brain. A good clench and having all that unit work as one is a good thing to pattern, I think.
Well, I know because you had talked about Olympic lifting, you had a lot of lifters open the jaw, right? Mm-hmm. So what would be the distinct difference between clenching versus having the jaw maximally open?
Yeah, so that's a very cool pattern that emerges there. Like people naturally in a lot of explosive kind of jumping, Olympic lifting will like really roar their mouth open. So it's a maximal jaw opening. But, think about like Jordan, in the air. Think about a lot of like discus throwers or shot putters, and they have this like mouth open, maybe a yell. And then, look at people deadlifting or sprinting and their mouth is closed. It's always closed. So you have these two distinct kind of strategies emerge with the jaw and the mouth. And when looking into the literature, so a lot of people say, okay, you're clenching or using mouth because of irradiation. And when you look into the literature, there's zero anything about irradiation, right?
Yeah.
Sherrington's law, because Sherrington's law of irradiation doesn't exist, actually. It was falsely kind of reported by Pavel Tsatsouline in one of his books. I think it was Power to the People. And then it kind of picked up after that. And people were like, oh, the law for radiation. But in the literature, there is this CAP phenomena, which is concurrent activation potentiation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like what you see when you clench your fist or brace your core with the Valsalva, and it allows you to produce more force during a movement. And they attribute this to like cortical overflow in the brain, in your motor cortex. So when you're squeezing these, like when you're having a remote voluntary contraction somewhere else in the body, there's this cortical overflow of activity to other areas so that when you use them, you can produce more force. And one of the best strategies for CAP is the jaw clench. And I think it's one of the easiest to like describe to other people. Like if I tell someone coming in on day one, week one, to do a Valsalva maneuver or brace, they kind of have to figure it out and coordinate it with the breathing. But if I say clench your jaw, right there, they know what that is. They know how to do it, and they get the benefit of that. In the studies of CAP, they saw an increase in performance from clenching the jaw. I mean, there's tons of studies on jaw clenching and performance. But they also saw an increase on like vertical jump from maximally opening the jaw. And they're saying, oh, because it's just activity in the jaw, it's spilling over. But I think it's probably more specific as far as the tension that you want to create. So naturally, if we look at like the body through torque, if you're doing external torque movements, we tend to see people in those sports open their mouth maximally. Internal torque movements, like the deadlift, powerlifting, we tend to see people clench their jaw maximally. I mean, we all kind of do that when we're lifting heavy loads without even thinking about it. So I think if we can now, so let's consciously and with intention use these strategies that people are already doing, tend to already go into with heavy weights, so that we can get more performance and more benefit out of our training. So yeah, it's very interesting that just the jaw and the different positions, directions we go in to achieve different tasks.
So you think along the way that people that don't train just lose this natural ability or instinct?
I think, I don't know if they lose it, or I think they can't produce effort at a high enough level for it to emerge. Because like athletic people, they feel what they do, right? They're not thinking about it. And then we as like in the training community reverse engineer their form, and we try to teach it people, but they're just like, are connected to their body. And when you're a new person trying to coordinate a movement, whether there's a squat or whatever, they're stuck in the head cognitively trying to perform this task. But I think if we could take the skill all the way down to like, okay, I want you to, push this sled as hard as you can, or throw this, you'll kind of see them just full effort, that stuff will start to emerge. So yeah, the more pieces of that you can give them and cue them, give them reference for, then I think all that tension orients in their body and it kind of locks it in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I find myself when I'm playing, when I'm about to take an impact, or I want to give that little bit of extra leverage if I'm leaning into somebody, I find myself just clenching the jaw harder right before that moment of impact. I've been doing it for a long time, even before I was doing master training. looking back at it. So yeah, it's just that last moment where you go, and so I think it's just instinctive to go, okay, I need to bite down. I'm really going to exert access as much as I can, because in my case, I'm typically going up against somebody vastly larger than me. It's not, when you're 5'3", most of the other big guys on the ice are, 5'10", 6 foot. So I'm already understanding I need to access a little bit more, just literally because of the difference in mass.
And you're wearing a mouthpiece during this, right?
Actually, I don't, because I wear a full face shield.
Okay, that's badass. Right.
Yeah, I actually don't.
It's all shaded too, right?
No. I've only seen one person with that, a tinted clear face. Yeah, because I wear a plexiglass shield. I used to wear a half shield until somebody hit me with their shoulder and I was picking skin out of my teeth. And then I went, oh yeah, that was dude, just full on. He was big too, just full on, just put his shoulder right in my jaw, right in my mouth. And I was like, I cut the inside of my lips. I was literally just picking skin out of my teeth. I was like, holy shit, bro. So that right after that, I went to the full visor.
It doesn't get fogged up.
It does, but I use a defogger before every game. But yeah, I tried to go back to the birdcage style that I grew up with, but for some reason, I just don't like it anymore. It's been so long since I've used a birdcage style helmet. I tried it for like about 3 weeks, and I just was like, "Oh, fuck this."
Do you lose the puck for just a second, which is bar?
Which is interesting because as a kid, that's all I had, so I didn't know any different, right? But you're a kid, so But then to go back to it as an adult, I was just all like, I literally could not get those damn bars out. Like as a kid, like I didn't even realize they were there. I knew they were there, but they weren't there. But as an adult, I was just all, okay, this shit's driving me nuts. So I used it for like 3 weeks. And I was like, no, I got to go back. I got to go with a full clear face shield.
Yeah, when it's clear, you will forget it's there.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Instead of being like, there's something in front of me. Yeah. And I don't feel safe.
Right. Yeah. I find that I naturally just bite down.
Yeah, that makes me think about climbing. Right. When I see people at the bouldering gym, when they're going for a big move, they always yell.
Yeah,
going for the top of the wall, there's always a yell, or even myself.
Yeah.
I might do a little yell. And so you're opening your mouth. And I just think with exercise in the gym, I mean, it's such an awkward thing for people in general, right? A lot of the general population, this is not a normal thing for them. It's like, okay, I'm going to try to get in shape. But you're right. You can't really tap into that unless you're going really hard, which beginners probably shouldn't do right away. In an athletic setting, it's just easier to tap into that naturally. It just happens. Throwing a punch, like you're going to do that.
Yeah.
I think another piece that elite athletes are doing that they might not be aware of or talk about is the tongue as well.
Mm.
I like to look at pictures of people mid sport.
Right. Yep.
And there's like this, it's something that I probably do, but I'm never conscious of it, or I have to look back like, did I do that? There's this like lifting of the tongue, almost like a swallow. And you have this face where you're almost like smelling something nasty.
Oh, yeah.
You see this with people running and sprinting. That's like, and it's almost like they're doing a little smirk.
Yeah.
Yeah. That reminds me before climbing, like I'll do that as a build up before I open or yell. You know what I mean? And once again, it's a feeling. It's not something you ever consciously think of. And it makes me think, okay, how could I play with this and manipulate it consciously and see what I can get out of it? But yeah, there's a whole world there in the tongue. And I think that just goes down to, everything we're talking about, the head and jaw and tongue, esophagus, it's connecting to the midline.
Yeah.
Like that's a very important structure that we pressurize and locomote with. So there's definitely a whole world there that I hope we get to explore.
Yeah. Speaking on that, my wife was showing me this video of this guy. He had a massive tongue tie, right? And it was never taken care of or anything as a kid. So you talk about that whole deep front line fascia. So there's a video of him getting it released, right? Because his whole life is, hey, you need to stand up tall. You need to work on your posture, blah, 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 do these strength exercises. He gets this thing released and he's he's up.
So
It's like
because that
you
was
can do all the exercises
Yeah.
you want, do everything you want, but there could just be something structurally holding you back right there.
was that underneath?
Yeah, tongue time right there.
Yeah, that underneath.
Yep.
So they just cut that,
Laser it off.
laser it
Yep.
off, and boom. So to think that that was literally pulling everything
Everything.
down
Yeah.
into flexion.
So like his confidence, everything, right?
Yeah.
It just kind of sucks you in.
Yeah, the bite affects your posture,
Mhm.
and your posture also affects your bite. It's
Mm.
one system feeding back and forth to each other. So once again, when you manipulate stuff up there, it will affect everything else in the system. But that's cool. It's like that one key log that
Yeah.
you needed to remove to get everything flowing. Like
Yeah.
simple.
So
Yeah,
when people are lifting or performing, let's say, heavier tasks, should the tongue be up against the roof of the mouth, or should we kind of be depressing it down? Or
It should be up, which naturally, so when you have the band and the towel
Mhm.
and you're biting it back near the molars, you're
Mhm.
naturally having your tongue below the band. So it's there for you to drive against. It's a good, like, loaded mewing posture that you could use that for. And if you're actively doing that, man, you will get sore in like the tongue, inner mouth, like inside the
deep?
jaw. Like, yeah, very deep places very quickly. I've even heard some people gagging when they're
Yeah.
doing it. So it's like muscles that haven't been tapped into much. And yeah, it surprised me because I would fatigue when doing maximum effort tongue against the band resistance. Man, 10 seconds, I'm like, okay, that's all I got. And I built up from there. But I'm like, man, that's probably another one of those things that we have been deconditioned to in modern times
Mhm.
with our diet and everything.
Yeah, the whole jaw thing, man. It starts at such an early age too, because we were talking about this earlier, right? Before we got on here about the formula and all that, but just kids latching on to bottles is different than breastfeeding because they don't have to expand their
Yeah.
jaw and their mouth as much.
Right.
So just having that bottle early on puts you at a big disadvantage already.
Plus, there's a subtle difference in the suction.
It's a
right?
different way that they latch. So
Yeah.
and a bottle's much faster.
Yes.
So the feeding times aren't as long. So they're not working as hard. Their jaw's not working as hard. So they're not getting that full development.
Yeah, and the tongue's functioning differently
Mhm.
with the bottle. And I think
Yeah.
they've shown that there's like some linguistic or verbal developmental differences.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's very interesting starting from day one, right?
Well, I think what's interesting too is just getting people to move the jaw, because people don't even protracting and retracting the jaw.
Like
People are like, people are like, I can do that. You're like, yeah, jut your jaw forward and now pull it back, and then move your jaw side to side. Abduct and adduct your jaw. These are all movements that you should be able to do with the jaw.
So Neil, does your wife ever talk about like the orofacial myofunctional
She does.
stuff?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Just the idea of like expanding your teeth and roof of your mouth and jaw.
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
I was talking to her about kind of the master training and everything, and about, hey, because Dennis and I were saying, hey, can we strengthen like the roots of the teeth through this?
Mm-hmm.
She said, no, it's a completely different system. Basically, by the time you're 13, 14, like those roots are set, and that's where they're going to be. But training the jaw, having a bigger, wider, stronger jaw is going to give you the best chance for all your teeth to fit in and give you more space, which is going to allow your teeth to be much stronger. So technically right now, like as an adult, yeah, we can strengthen our jaw, but we're not really going to create more space for our teeth because these things are already set. But early on, in your childhood development, if this stuff takes place and your jaw can fully develop to where it should be, that's probably where all the magic's really going to happen.
So what about like hardware and braces?
She said if there's, they've shown too, like too much movement, all that stuff can actually make your roots weaker.
Mm.
So if they do it too much.
I'm obsessed looking at all these before and after pictures from the myofunctional and mewing community. on how their face looks completely different after 3 years of doing these exercises. Like the side profiles, front, it's like their bone structure is different. They're like, jaws in here and then it comes out.
Yeah.
And it's also like affecting where they place their head in relation to their body below. It's fascinating that you could change the way you look like that.
Well, then also your airways change too.
Yeah.
Like, or like the way they function, I should say. It just breathe much, much better if everything's in a good spot.
Yeah, nasal cavities and everything's affected from that. You get that little turbine, larger inhales. That I've heard people coming off of their sleep apnea machine and things like that. So yeah, it's very, I mean, I should know this to make sense because we do that with the rest of the body.
Yeah.
We change the structure through adaptation and strength. But once again, it's like this intricate part that we seem to elude us or is mystical. But yeah, I think treating it just like, face day and back day.
That's a good one right there.
You got a bunch of people at the gym just staring in the mirror going, clenching.
Hashtag face day. Today we're doing closed mouth training. Tomorrow we're going to do open mouth training.
I'm telling you, like the haka and, doing those like ritual, tribal, like extreme facial expressions and like aggressive facial expressions before competition or battle is, I'm sure that how they see it.
Yeah.
I think that's linked to the concurrent activation potentiation, because a lot of them are going into external torque, which when you link it to the nervous system, that is sympathetic. That is like fight mode. That is, let's get amped up. And it's like this, look at Klokov before a lift. He's like baring his teeth. He looks like he's about to kill someone, like he's a lion. And yeah, when I see these in traditions and cultures built in, I'm like, okay, there's something there. There's some sort of functionality to it. And I think the research behind CAP helps link it to, okay, so there's actually something here. And it's making a difference, I think, like I feel it at least in the shift of state nervous system. When you do that face, you feel different, And
then, I was just saying with the haka too, you've got slapping, you've got stomping, you've got clapping. I mean, there's all that stuff for what you're talking about, the CAP.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting.
I've actually been doing that before I go play hockey.
The haka?
Yeah.
Or just slapping
little something like opening, just tongue, eyes, slapping chest. Yeah, I do about 4 or 5 minutes before I get in the car and take off for the ice rink.
Very cool.
Yeah. And I gotta be like, it was kind of funny. Like I switched skate brands, which is a huge big deal, but it's interesting. Like the last, I've been spending more time on the ice, but the last 2 or 3 months, like I just feel way better when I'm out, and even Sherry's like, well, how come? I said, well, switching the skates has been a little bit better because the Bauers, for whatever reason, just feel much better on my feet than the CCMs. Free plug their advertising companies. But also then I was just like, I told her, I was like, I've been doing the, some little elements of the haka, getting a little bit more, potentiation built up. I said, it's crazy. Like I just feel better out on the ice.
Did you start doing that after we talked to Michelle about it?
Yeah. Michelle had mentioned it. And then I was just like, well, okay, I mean, can't play any worse. Right? So, I mean, it's only going to, not going to make me play worse than I already am.
Yeah. Michelle Dalcourt, we talked to him and he was saying that the haka is he's like, that's like the perfect warm-up routine because he's like, it just gets everything, every system going.
Yeah, how I think about it is if it's so easy to stimulate the vagal tone by just humming or pressing here or down regulating through extending the exhale, it's got to be just as easy to access the opposite, that sympathetic fight mode. And I think maybe that's what the haka is doing.
Yeah.
And even better. So now we got tools to down regulate, up regulate, depending on what our intention is and task. So I think that's cool. Another thing, I'm always saying it, man, that'd be cool to do a study on, right?
Well, because if you think about it, the circumstances for doing it, it was created because you had men that were going to battle. You possibly weren't coming back. So think about what you feel internally when you hit those moments where you're like, oh, they're high tension moments, or there's a lot of nervousness, right? You start to get that. So if you add that little bit of extra element of doing like a haka, it just takes you to a new level.
I think that's huge because I have a feeling people who get into that and whatever belief system or identity you put layer on top of it, like this is my ancestors have done this. This is for my people. I'm calling upon gods, whatever it is, whatever that physical expression you're doing. I don't think your body's going to go into a freeze state after that. When there's a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, and people freeze up and they have this like energy in their body. I think when you channel that energy and form it into this aggressive, confident posture and facial expression, man, that could be the deciding factor between someone, going forward and trying to step back. Yeah. And then animals, you ever see the animals after like they've been chased, like the prey, like they do this shake, like they shake it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this might be on the other side where you're like moving into it, into the fight and the chase. Yeah, who knows? Well,
hopefully you can get up here one of these days and we can get together and do some play around with some more.
Do the haka together?
Well, a little bit more. Yeah, and then doing some bite training, some neck training. Yeah, I've been digging it, the last year plus. It's just understand and say, hey, man, this is a whole area that needs to be worked. Like anything else, work it responsibly. Don't be negligent with it. And if you have questions, try to seek out somebody that has at least had some in-depth experience, either just doing it themselves or they've done, a lot of research into understanding how to train these systems in these areas.
Yeah. And thanks again for your exploration, Dennis, and, inspiring, playing around with all the things you play around with.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I mean, I expect people to make comments, like the first time I threw that up there, people made, and it is what it is, right? So, with those, when people say, well, that's just stupid. I mean, we've seen the comments, people say, that's dumb as fuck. What a waste of time. And it's like, well, okay, to each their own. I don't expect people to buy into everything we do by any means, but there are going to be people that see value in it and they get it. They're like, I get it. I see what they're doing with this. And if they have interest, I know you have a program now. So definitely, your master training, you have that online now.
Yeah. So we're calling it the Predator Protocol.
Predator Protocols,
yep. It's just, you could see all the literature behind the bite training, how you could use it. And then we feature, the technique on how to set it up, different ways to apply it to your training, and some of the CAP activations, which we use for priming before movements. Now I want to change it to like mini haka.
If this is something that you're curious about or want to play around with, definitely I would recommend looking up DJ's information and checking out the program. I think what's interesting too is people seeing images of the old time strongmen. Like we've seen images of people picking up 500 plus pounds in their jaws. I mean, that's incredible. That's amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot. The human body has a lot of potential in it. It's cool to explore your own. Because these things are there. Your jaw is strong. Your teeth will be okay, and you'll just have another resilient part of your body if you smartly and progressively train it.
Very true, very true. So once again, where can people get a hold of you or find the program if they're interested?
Yeah, best place is Instagram at Strong Camps. I'm like shadow banned, so you have to type all the way to the Strong Camps in the S at the end. Then I should pop up.
You're shadow banned?
Yeah, I've been for like months now. I've just been like reported and blocked too many times, apparently.
What?
Do they tell you what you're reported for, though? Like for your content? No. Is it because your content? Like, I mean, it's not like you're...
Yeah, I have a pretty family-friendly...
Yeah, right? I'm like...
It's not like it's politically charged.
Oh my God, seriously.
I think it's from. So I have a move account called Move Boys.
Okay.
With my friend Dr. Garrett.
Oh, parodies and stuff.
Yeah, we just make fun of like fitness, and ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people, serious movement gods on Instagram, who I've been blocked and like reported by on my account from that. They feel a little triggered, but it's okay. It's just social media.
People are way too serious, man.
Holy shit! Wow,
yeah, I like that. That counts great.
That is a good account. That is pretty funny shit. So, all right, brother. Well, great meeting up with you. Always great talking to you, man.
So, but are you in a new gym, man?
Oh yeah, that was the other.
The videos you've put out lately. Do you have your own place now, or
no? So the gym I was at, they relocated, so I'm at a new one down the street.
Yeah, okay,
just a private gym called Boombox in Temecula, California. Drop by anytime you're in town.
There you go, folks. So if you're in Temecula, you want to meet up with DJ, there you go, Boombox, folks. So, well, until the next episode, thank you for joining us, and be good to each other. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and whatever platform you're on, either Apple, iTunes, or Spotify, please, if you could leave a review, we'd appreciate that. If you have any questions that we can answer for you, be sure to leave those in the comments also.
If you're looking for more information on our education, our products, please go to www.stickmobility.com.
And also hit that subscribe button to that YouTube channel, and don't forget our live Instagram classes 3 times a week. If you want to join in, grab your sticks and hit that 45-minute class.